Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chat from the Deep, our weekly live stream post-session discussion. We talk about what just happened during D&D. The chat for session 65. So if you've not watched that session yet, please go do that because there will be spoilers. I'm your DM Eric, and joining me we have Gottwald's player Chris,
Hello.
Max player Raymond.
Hello.
This one started with a big boss fight, which I was a little worried about, given the situation that we started in, which was half the party was still wrapping up another fight.
Right.
Mac was paralyzed. And had basically aggroed an entire boss room worth of troops. Thankfully, you were not quite alone this time. Toril came up and provided some very useful backup with having his big AoE spell.
Mm-hmm.
And then Borgus was able to get a few theatrics off and absorb some hits. I also, even though I was hitting with my arm blade guys a little bit, I wasn't really getting through to your vulnerable people too much. I took Borgus down, but I think I struck Toril once, maybe hit Cheese a few times. I feel like you guys actually put up a pretty good bulwark. And then my big guy wasn't able to hit. Like, he did a couple. I think he hit Toril with his Distant Whispers, but didn't punch him. I had like 3 chances to hit Toril, and I couldn't connect on any of those. So I was actually surprised once Gottwald and Sabra made it here. Sabra actually wasn't able to get off her big AoEs because of the friendlies being in the way. But Gottwald, once you were able to wrestle... Really, once you showed up, it like completely stymied the boss. Or I guess I should say, Mac was able to get up and then take out all the rest of the automatons, which was pretty cool. And I did feel bad about
that was a joke I made. Is that by the time I got there was one enemy left.
Right.
Like that was it.
Yeah, and it is rough to be stun locked like that. But I don't know. We're in the later stages of D&D, and it's mentally I try to lower the DC. Whenever people are making those like repeated saves, because I know it does suck to be locked down like that. But I at least glad
I would have used my thing to help you, Ray, if I had been in the room. Like I could do my thing to make people have advantage on saves.
Mm-hmm.
But, I just wasn't there.
It's all right.
But I do like that you were able to stand up and immediately get your revenge by like destroying all 4 of them. That was pretty cool. That was a neat moment.
Which is that you didn't fudge any numbers there? Like he just literally did that damage.
One of them had like 19 hit points, and you did like 17. So I was like, it's just cooler if they all get exploded. I think so. There was a little bit of fudging there, but honestly, the others had all been almost taken down by about half health from those repeated Hunger of Hadar things that really did add up after just a single round. I was annoyed. I forgot that Loser Girl had Dispel Magic as a spell. Although I did try to go after Toril first and attack it, but I think once they figured out they couldn't break his concentration, I was like, all right, let me just end the spell.
Yep.
How'd you all feel about fighting a mech that was technically 2 different stat blocks? I guess I didn't really get to go off too much, especially once Gottwald and Sabra showed up, but the idea being, because of its psionics, it can still use its full, which you saw once Heather got it, once Sabra got a hold of it, it can still use its full spell casting, but they can't actually be targeted while inside the psionic suit.
It did stymie us a little bit because I forget who it was trying to do a spell. It was Ray. It was
Reese. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let him. I was like, you can only target the suit. You can't target the mind flayer inside. Yeah.
Right.
The tricky thing was,
it's an interesting idea. I like it.
Well, I was worried because I cast Hold Person on Mac, and normally the go-to is to break that person's concentration. But what if you can't ever get to that person?
Yeah.
Which was the key here, and that was going to make.
I guess there's a lot of questions that I have like mechanically for that sort of thing. Like, if someone had done like a fireball, like an AOE, would you have had that only affect the suit and not what's inside?
So the way it's written in the rules. I basically looked up the rules for total cover, and it kind of just adjudicates to the DM where it's like they can't be targeted by spells, but certain spells may affect them if they're in total cover. So I would have had to just play it by a case-by-case basis and been like, all right, well, if you're inside a mech suit, can you take damage from a fireball? I was going to err on the side of probably not from those kind of elemental attacks, but if you did something like a psychic AoE or something...
Right.
Then they could probably be affected by that. Gas, I wasn't also sure of. I was like, how like airtight is the mech suit with gas? So I would have really had to.
How many of those capabilities does the suit have?
Yeah, and the other thing is I would have looked and seen like, is the fight going bad for the players? Is it going bad for the
Right.
DM? Like maybe I'll balance it based on that. But it kind of would have been a case by case basis, I think. But
so really, Reese was on the right track. It was just the fact that his spell literally said you have to target a creature.
correct, and I think most single target spells do say that,
Mm-hmm.
like a creature you can see. But and what's funny is when Heather was mentioning, oh, I'm going to do the spell, I thought, oh, she's going to do like heat metal or something kind of crazy. Which like, no, I'm just going to open it up. I was like, I didn't even think about opening it up in the middle of combat. That's clever as hell with the knock spell.
I feel like that's why she got the MVP.
Yeah.
He's just opening that, like skipping
the boss fight. Yeah.
Which I don't know how much health the armor had left. You told us.
Actually, it's at 200. Oh, it had 100, about 130 out of 200 left.
Okay.
So you weren't quite halfway through taking it down.
So we had a lot of fight left with that armor. And
right, which is how I was thinking. Like that fight was going to be more of the session, really. But you guys through, and I'm not even upset about it. You guys did some really clever means. I was really impressed with it. That you were able to unlock it and then use another action to open it up, and then because I was really making you go through the steps, like all right, that unlocks it. Another action has to open it, and then he's still in there and has to be targeted. But you guys did a great job of just getting, there's no other minions, so you took out all the minions, which makes it very advantageous and like literally surrounded.
I feel like Heather is specifically like, I feel like in the last few sessions almost she's found more of her groove with her necromancer with zombie minions.
Yeah,
like she like using them in alternative means,
utility stuff. Yeah,
utility stuff. So her like using the knock spell and then literally just having her zombie walk up and open the thing up.
Yeah,
it's like yeah, of course.
That was a good combo. Yeah. I should have given her inspiration. Did I give her inspiration? Gosh, I'm bad about that. I'm going to go ahead and give her inspiration right now. I'm going to put it on her sheet. So I've officially marked her as post-inspiration. So we'll see if we all remember about that, but I'm awarding it to her. Not posthumously, what am I trying to say? Post-session.
Post-session, yeah.
Post-session inspiration rewarded. Because that was a really definitive end to the fight. Because once you can take him out of the mech suit, that takes out that stat block, and then Lucifer actually is a pretty meaty. You've seen mind flayers, but all the named mind flayers have custom stat blocks, all these different like features and abilities. He was a big spellcaster, a lot of spells available to him.
Yeah,
but you guys had surrounded him.
What I found funny is that despite that, it really did play out like the ending of Avengers. We're like, like, yes, he is a god, he is powerful.
Yeah,
but we're just tossing him around.
We have a Hulk. Yeah,
Muppet at the end.
Yeah, and I was totally fine with that. The way you guys had gotten to that fight, and again, it started so dire, and then by the end of it, you're just like, yeah, we're gonna bully this guy.
Yep.
So I appreciated all of that, and I think the climax of the fight had kind of petered out. I did try to get I tried to get that one mind blast off. It's like, all right, it's gonna do its like biggest attack, and you guys both made the save. And that's like, all right, that's demoralizing now for the creature. Has got to kind of give it up at that point.
Exactly. Yep.
But I loved the little question of moral about the keeping this prisoner alive, and it was funny because
I don't know why we got hung up on that, because of course we're gonna kill him. Like,
it's still a thing that you have to kind of pause about. I appreciate that you guys did kind of pause. You're like, all right, wait a minute, this dude.
But there is so much stuff that as a DM you try to make us feel bad about that we just don't. Oh, you really want to kill this person? And we're like, yeah, of course we do. Like, what? But yet this one, we're like,
big difference between this group and my patron group, by the way, who plays morally generally good characters, and then you guys who play more like a Suicide Squad bunch of characters.
Right. But this time we were like, okay, no, the mind flayer that is surrendered.
Well, that's the funny thing is this was all stacked in favor of killing the creature anyway, because A, it's a mind flayer, who are mostly intrinsically bad, although there are, I guess, good ones out there. And then B, you have one of the DM NPCs even telling you, like, yeah, this is a very dangerous individual. They're high up on the villain's food chain. Yeah. It is irresponsible to leave them alive, and I fucking hate these guys.
Like even outside, which my Nazi analogy, like even outside of the mind control, this is still like goring or something.
Right, yeah, they're like high up on the villain thing.
Yeah.
And what's funny is usually the DM through an NPC is telling you like, no, we should spare this character, and I'm doing the opposite
Right.
here. But even
Giving
after
up,
all
yeah.
that, yeah, you're like, I don't know, this feels kind of weird. But as Eric, I appreciated you at least bringing that up, and be like, all right, this is a captive though; they fully surrendered to us.
Right.
Does that make us the baddies for executing a captive?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
I mean, it's just one of those things where there's not really a mechanically right or wrong answer here. It's just whatever you guys, how you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm sure there were ways to effectively imprison this creature, at least temporarily, but then...
But I think our logic at the end was that, like, even if we did that, and we defeated the Elder Brain, and this thing was on its own, it could think on its own,
yeah,
it would still be a fucking, like, homicidal monster. Like, it
Right.
would still be a bad guy.
and that's even kind of what Vestra said at the end, was like, look, this isn't one of those generic mind flayers who's just here working the 9 to 5. This is like one of
Yeah.
the true believers of what they're doing here, and it's just not a good situation.
Yep.
And then you
And then,
killed the
and then you the point you just made about us being like a Suicide Squad-esque team, which a lot of our characters are, or teams are. A lot of the humor that we get is also very similar to that Suicide Squad
Very
style
dark
humor
gallows.
of like us like talking to this mind flayer for a while, and then Sovereign just being like, yeah, and then I step on him because this conversation's not going anywhere.
Yep. How most of the social interactions can break down.
Right.
What do you think about the fists?
Oh, they're awesome. They're great. They're just a straight upgrade, right? Like they're just straight up better fists.
Yeah.
I
was looking at what there is. So most of the treasure is in that storage room, but I didn't like a lot of the treasure that was in there. It was like I flavored the. I don't know if you remember when you fought the Swagan Barons. They had like the psychic blades.
Oh yeah.
In as written, they're actually just magic swords. So you find some of those in here, but they're only used by thralls, so I just flavored them differently. So I didn't want to use them here. There was like a wand of lightning bolts in here. I'm like, fuck that. Like,
Well,
she's
you've already given our
she's already like
wizard.
unlimited lightning bolts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of loot like that. I was like, all right. And then I was looking through like, does anybody even need anything? I was like, well, fuck, Gottwald. He does have a magic axe, but he never got magical like gauntlet things for his fist, and it was something I know Chris mentioned earlier on. So I was like, all right, it's embarrassingly late in the campaign to give somebody a cool weapon, but better late than never.
I'm fine with it because up until now, the magic items that you've given me have been an interesting what's the build switch out? Like, okay, do I want to do all my grapple push stuff? If so, I put the axe away, I bring the shield out, and now I'm in grapple mode. You know, I've got a higher AC, but I can grapple.
You would hate it if we played the very specific rules of like only stowing like one item at a time and all that.
Which I feel like what was my paladin Kalinar also would have just fell
like
apart.
Constantly
if that was the
switching
case.
her load out.
Yeah. So I was kind of playing it like that, but now that I've got these, I can kind of just focus on like I don't really need to switch out because my fists do as much damage as my axe, I think. So
yeah, I don't actually know what the comparison is to the bonus unarmed strikes versus, because I know your axe can do a lot of damage.
let's see. Yeah, pull it up. The axe does 2d12 just straight up,
which is pretty sick.
It's pretty. That's really good. So it's 2 through 24. And the mechanized fists, it's not as good. It now does 1d8 plus 1d6.
Yeah, and with a +1 on top of that. But yeah,
with a +1 to hit on top of that, which is something the axe I don't think has. Yeah, so I have a +10 to hit with my fist versus a +9 to hit with the axe.
Yeah.
So better chance to hit. So it's still like I could pull the axe back out for just pure damage.
Yeah.
But the fists are much closer now. It's
okay.
So yeah, I think it's awesome, and I the ability to push 15 feet is going to come in. I don't know if it's going to come in handy in the last fight or two, but yeah.
It's funny how those abilities never read that sexy, but yeah, after you play D&D, you're like, man, any abilities that can move people around are so cool.
Exactly. That stuff's pretty good.
That was good for what was his name? The turtle.
Yes.
with his
Yeah, the vine whip
the vine
sword.
whip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I think that's when we first really realized that, like, oh, moving people around is like really fucking useful.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of ledges and like just positioning things you can do to people.
Yep. Yeah, that was. Oh, and then the injectable things is something I added last minute because I was looking at all of your character sheets and realizing that we don't have the time for a long rest right now. And even, which I think Raven pointed this out, if you short rest, some of you don't even have any hit dice to roll. So I was like, this
Right.
is a bit of a problem because I hate to have you guys
You're
go
not
in.
going to give us another long rest.
Yeah.
But we have a lot to go. Yeah.
You
so
have
we
it.
had to
Well, you
give
have a
us
short
something.
rest opportunity, but you literally can't get any hit points back on a short rest. So I was like,
Right.
well, fuck, I gotta give them some kind of healing. And then somebody in the chat pointed out, like during, or no, I think it was a comment afterwards actually, who mentioned that I could. So that, by the way, that mutagenic table was in the fucking pipe room. When you guys were fighting in that pipe room,
Yeah.
that was included on the table.
Really?
So
The tentacle
remember
arm?
that pipe room, every time you do a miss or something and you have to roll on the pipe hazard table, one of the entries on pipe hazard table is roll on the mutagenic table because you get sprayed with this gas that mutates you.
Wow.
And nobody
I-
ever rolled
okay.
on that table. Or nobody ever got that entry. So
Oh, you mean it was there? You didn't remove it. It was actually there.
it was there. It was there the whole
we just
time.
never rolled
And
it.
nobody triggered it just on luck.
Wow.
So I never got to use it. And then somebody pointed out, like, you know, this would be because I was thinking I need to give them some kind of like healing thing and some kind of healing magic item. And somebody's like, hey, why don't you, and maybe I'll have it like a side effect. And somebody's like, why don't you include that mutagenic table as a, I was like, fuck, that's such a good idea.
That's great. That works.
Yeah. So like immediately I'm going to do that idea. So what essentially it does is those injectables gives you more than a potion of supreme healing. A potion of supreme, or is it superior? Whatever the highest one is, gives you 10d4 plus 20. This one gives you 15d4 plus 20. So it's more than the highest kind of potion of healing can give you.
Yeah.
And gives you the benefits of potion of heroism, which is a pretty big, nice buff. Which is just bless for an hour, no concentration required, and 10 temporary points, whatever. So I wanted to make sure it was a good thing to risk having the mutagenic stuff in there. And some of them are very bad, I will just say. But
Yeah.
Mac actually got one that's just, I guess, a straight upgrade, if a little creepy.
True.
So I thought it was a fun use of that, and a way for me to give a way for me to basically restore the characters, because I didn't know going into it how damaged you guys would get after that boss fight.
Right,
You actually made it
right.
out of there more unscathed than I thought you did, where you guys didn't actually take that much more damage compared to where you were when we started the session.
I'm curious. What would you have said during the butt? Remember you were describing how it looked like a health potion when I was investigating?
I think I was gonna say, but you do detect like specific markers that look for mind flayer DNA, or I don't know what I would have said, but something that there was some kind of extra layer in here swirling around that isn't like an unknown substance. Basically, like teasing the fact that there is something else in here
Something else is
aside
gonna
from the
happen,
restorative
yeah.
benefits. But I wouldn't tell you it was like some kind of mutating
Right.
quality or something.
Because I was wondering if that would have swayed me or not.
It seemed like you were all in at the moment.
It's funny, like one person has to risk it to figure out what it does, but now that you
Yeah.
know what it does, you're like, okay.
Mhm.
As far as no one else took it at the time, though. Everyone's like, I'm just gonna pocket this.
Yeah. I was like, okay. Which is something you could do and use it in emergency situations if you need to.
Well, I don't know what everybody else is at. I'm fine, so I didn't want to take anything.
Yeah, I was impressed. Where did your character go? For some reason you're not on the map anymore.
Me?
Yeah. Oh,
I'm in
you're
the
back in the
room.
brain. Sorry, I missed you. Okay, so yeah, I don't know what everybody's at right now, hit point wise. I was mainly worried about Mac. I think I was looking at Mac, going, "Holy shit, he has like no hit point or no hit dice
Right.
left."
Which makes sense because he's the one who took the, took
Yeah.
the drugs.
So I guess you still had some hit points you could roll. Twirl, I don't know if he just used a bunch. Remember at the start of the session, he had to catch up to the short rest we all got last time. He's at 0 right now. 0 hit dice, but he's almost full health.
Yeah.
Yeah, max at full health. So yeah, you guys are okay, and you can use those injectables to help you out and perhaps have zany things happen.
Yep. We'll see.
Yeah.
I feel like it will be like a mid fight. Like if I'm less than half health and in danger, I might choose to inject myself. Who knows?
And I mean that's a nice buff too, right? The bless spell is extra 1d4 is pretty nice too. So
for sure.
I loved that Heather was genuinely surprised that I actually was prepared for somebody to take over the mech suit.
I legit thought you were going to use the tentacle excuse again. Like you're going to be like, and then you get in there and you see that it's all operated by tentacles, and you can't, you can't operate it. That's what I thought you were going to say. So when you said like, oh yeah, I've got rules for this, I'm like, I was surprised. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I think everybody's a little surprised. I had to be very careful. I think I used most of the rules as written. There might have been a few tweaks here and there or wordings that I changed. But I liked the fact that it actually does appear decently balanced because nobody obviously has psionics. So you wouldn't get... So not being able to use your proficiency bonus on stuff is pretty big while you're in there.
Yeah.
Because that's, what, a +4 right now?
Right.
So you don't get that to your saves or ability checks or your attack rolls, which is huge. I'm sure we're going to forget that.
Yeah.
You also can't cast spells, which is pretty big for the wizard.
It is.
But
it's those other abilities.
She has like a 60-foot fly speed, AC of 20, like an extra shield of 150 hit points. She can't be directly targeted. Like it's a really interesting trade-off. Like you said, it's almost like changing your class. And there's nothing stopping you from, exiting it at some point and going back into wizard mode, with the caveat that it'll take you a full action to actually exit the suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody in the crafting thought it was Mac that was going to jump in.
Oh, yeah.
But we figured that, and I honestly went back and forth on whether to give you guys the psionic suit, because it's a tricky thing to give the players. But we're so late in the campaign, and this is not something I would give anybody like halfway through a campaign. This gives me like bad memories of giving you like a shield guardian back in Tomb of Annihilation or something, where you have to like nerf them and do other things. Right. Whereas here, I'm like, it's like eye-poppingly crazy, but we're very late, and it does prevent you from literally casting spells, which is a pretty big deal for a wizard. So
it is, yeah.
I think it's interesting.
Yep. It's funny. It prevents her from casting spells, but I don't think, as described, it prevents her from using wands. Which is a lot of her spell casting at the moment.
That's interesting. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could technically say you can even wield the wand while piloting the mech. So I would probably have to poo-poo that. Unless she came up with some shenanigans where like, I've got the wand outside held by the sonic suit thing.
Right, exactly.
Maybe I would allow that. I don't know. That does get tricky. The Wand of Wonder is hilarious, though. It often fucks her up more than anything else. So I'm tempted to let her just continue using it. But yeah, I expected that fight to last a lot longer. So I thought you guys really bodied the mech pretty good. Took out the Mind Flayer pretty good. Took out all the minions kind of in one blow. Like, it started getting dicey, but once you guys cleaned it up, man, it went by real quick. So I was like, shit, we are still going. So we went through the loot. I was thinking I would end the session whenever, especially if you had broken the console and turned off all the lights and freed all the prisoners, I would have stopped session right then. I'd been like, the lights turn off, you hear strange noises from the prison, end the session, and then we kind of do like a big kind of fight rumble thing after that.
Oh, I actually wanted to ask about that. Like, how much did you give us there? Like, I was like not sure what. Not that I wasn't sure what was going on, but I wasn't sure, like, mechanically how much you were hand waving and how much was written in terms of the way the jails were, like the actual cells, the whatever the entrapped creatures were working, and the console.
What I settled on was it was going to take an intelligence check or investigation, whatever, to look at the console and suss out how well you could do at operating the doors. And I had like ranges. So if you rolled this to this, the only thing you could figure out is you can just destroy the console and open up all and turn off the security system, basically.
Okay.
If you roll this to this,
which is what our friend figured out, Vestris figured out.
Right. Basically, if you roll the worst if you roll the worst thing, which was literally anything below a 15 would have given you this result, which is like, hey, I know that we can destroy the console, and that would essentially deactivate everything. Because this is a main quest thing, I can't gate you guys from being able to shut it off. So I wanted to make sure there was a fail safe where it's like, hey, you can do the Jurassic Park thing and just shut everything down. So that was always on the cards. And then if you roll better intelligence or investigation, then you can figure out all the way up to where you can even roll open individual cells versus having to open all of them at once.
Okay, which is what we ended up with.
Yeah, and I felt I was a little miffed because I was expecting to have somebody roll it, and then you're like, oh no, we can have Vestris do it, and I was like, shit, yeah, I guess you can. But I really that's why I went with it when I was like, oh, Vestris rolled low, I can work with this. But then Heather kept talking about how like, oh well, let me investigate this and do this. It's like, all right, she's actually putting in the investigative work like I wanted to originally to work things. So I'll just treat it like that. So I'll just use my same chart, and she rolls a 20 above thing. I was like, all right, I'll let you, open that one. And so I do regret a little bit because I do think it would have been fun to open up some of the, open up more of
the other creatures,
creatures and a little royal rumble. But also we're kind of late in the session. I'm like, you know what? I think that was my other decision is like, we're getting to where it makes more sense to wrap up this part and get to the next part versus leave just a little bit of this part left for next session.
I see, yeah.
And then try to include like some of the next part, and then it kind of gets off pacing a little bit. So I think that was my ultimate decision is like, all right, let's just let this happen and keep going and go an extra like 10 minutes, and then we can just kind of put a bow on this whole area.
Okay, yeah.
It was also kind of why we went pretty quick through the brain and all that stuff, because I'm like, you know what, we're to the end now. We can just kind of wrap all this stuff up. And I honestly did not. I was honestly planning on prepping like Kazin's dialogue and stuff next week. Like I straight up didn't know we'd make it this far.
Oh yeah.
So I was just that's why I was probably not as didn't have like a good speech prepared or anything. I knew what his attitude was going to be and everything, but you guys straight up made it a lot farther than I thought you would. For probably almost the first time in this campaign, I think.
Right.
Yeah, usually make it just as far or not nearly as far, but this time you actually did make it a lot further than I anticipated. Yeah. And I had prepped for 2 sessions for this area plus getting to the next area. Instead, we didn't quite get to the next one, but we're basically there, and kind of wrapped all this up. So that kind of accelerates my plans.
Yeah.
I don't think we have anything left other than just getting to the next area, though, right? I don't think we had. I mean, I was going to give you guys a second to prep if you wanted to cast any spells or do anything or potions or something.
I'll have to look and see if we got any potions to drink.
Yeah, that'd be the only thing in terms of
I like at this point, like us drinking every single resistance potion we have is probably a good idea.
Right. Yes.
Which is
stuff like that. Look at all your consumables.
Like a dozen potions are about to get drunk.
Like The Witcher, just like
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I know I've got a few that I don't think are going to come into play in this fight. Like I've got like fire and force and you know whatever.
So that actually accelerates our plans a little bit. What's next?
I've got what I've got is cold resistance, force resistance, poison resistance.
Oh my gosh.
I got potions of water breathing, which I assume I'll need. A potion of gaseous form still. A filter of love.
A filter of love. might as well. Fuck it.
Might as well. And then I've also got a potion of invisibility and a potion of speed, which would probably
wow. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think
so many icons on your screen.
Yeah, as far as like that kind of thing, yeah, we could probably. I mean, some of them though are like in combat. Some of them are like 1 minute things. But
if Savra can't cast, well, I guess she could still concentrate on a spell because I don't know if she can still concentrate on your Embiggen while she's in this.
Oh, that's a good question. That is a good question.
If she can't cast spells, I'd probably argue she can't concentrate on them either.
Yeah,
because she's like concentrating on piloting the suit, so that probably de-Embiggins you.
Okay, that's fine.
So I'm gonna shrink you just
my own embiggening.
Yeah, I'll shrink you for now. We can do it next time.
Okay.
Anything else about this session or about this kind of final little area of the dungeon? I guess the only 2 rooms that you ended up missing, which were the 2 closed rooms that were in that along that length hallway. One of them was like an X-Men danger room thing. That literally, I didn't even try to make rules. Or it's a big complex trap, but like you would just open the door and be like, nope, and walk out. Like there's no reason to be in there.
Yeah.
Just literally a training room for them. And the other room is yet another storage treasure room that I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And was going to have that be like just a map room where you just see that, oh, this is where they're planning all their raids. And you can see like the map of the Sword Coast and all that kind of stuff. So both of them were not really anything in there.
Okay.
Because obviously, if there were any enemies, they would have aggroed to the other fight.
Yeah. What about the 2 rooms in this control room?
Oh yeah,
Just yours,
I
yeah.
mentioned they're labeled generator.
Okay.
Each one has a kind of psionic crystal generator inside, and there are rules for being able to deactivate the generator or just destroying the generator, which does
Okay.
the similar thing as destroying the control panel, where it turns off all the security system
Yeah.
in the building. Although destroying it also causes it to explode and does a fuck ton of damage.
Okay.
So probably not a good idea to do
Great.
that.
Yeah.
That was the issue with me making this be locked by the final boss, is that doing that isn't as impactful as if you had gotten here early, been able to get in there early and been able to turn off like all the lights and all the securities and all that stuff, and
Right.
then work your way through the dungeon. The suit requires her mentally driving. It kind of does, yeah. It's literally powered by her thoughts.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
It doesn't specifically say she loses concentration or requires concentration, but it does say she can't cast spells. So as a DM, I would probably argue she can't.
The problem is that she's constantly casting that spell on me. Like every minute, it's like a minute long spell.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yeah,
She's
like in
just keeping
between
it up.
fights. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I forgot
yeah.
about that. It's not like a
So
long
if-
spell.
So if she can't continuously cast the spell, then I'll have it for a minute after she's in the suit, and then
Right.
it'll go
Yeah.
away.
And no, I'm not using Druid Wild Shape as a precedent for a psionic suit. That is not the same thing that's happening here.
Different mechanics.
Different mechanics, yeah. This is not an intrinsic ability of the wizard to climb inside a psionic suit and power it with your mind.
Yeah, and you described, I believe, that like mind flayers could, though, because the boss that was in there was casting spells.
Correct. Yes.
Only if you are a mind
it's
flayer.
literally written where if you have the psionic spellcasting trait, which I don't think any player character
Oh,
can have,
okay.
that's how you also get a proficiency bonus.
Okay.
You get to use your proficiency bonus while inside there, and you get to cast spells. Yes, I'm explaining to the chat this as well. because the Illithid built the damn thing and literally has I don't, for some reason I closed the window. I can't pull it up again.
I mean, it makes sense, and honestly, I thought that's the same reason you were the same logic you were gonna use to tell us why we couldn't operate it. I thought you were going to describe like tentacle controls, like
right, yeah. So instead, I kind of use the magic item rule, where it's like magic items can kind of mold to the player and stuff. I guess I could have made a rule where you have to make like an investigation check or one intelligence check to know how to pilot it, or a series of intelligence checks or something. But
yeah.
Yeah, so that was a ruling for that one. Referring to the can't cast spells caveat, which is similar to Wild Shape, but precast is valid. Unlike Rage, which specifies the inability to concentrate also. Yeah, I could see the argument either way, I guess. If you precast something and then you can maintain concentration while in here. And it technically doesn't say that specifically on the psionic suit that you can no longer concentrate on previously cast spells. But as the DM, I would probably adjudicate, because of the fact that you're moving this around with your mind, and you can't cast spells while you're in here because of psionics, lack of psionics, then I would probably also say that eliminates your ability to concentrate on ongoing spells as well. But in Chris's argument, it wasn't even necessarily the concentration that's the problem. It's the fact that the spell that I've been letting them. The reason it's been embiggening is because technically Savra's been casting in large on Gottwald like every minute or something. And that's been her ongoing. I haven't been able to actually catch it, but I don't think she's cast a single concentration spell.
I don't think so.
I think most of her spells have been
watching
instants.
That.
Yeah, I may have missed that occasionally, but that's actually what's happening. So it's kind of a moot point. I mean, it may come up that she pops out and casts concentration and pops back in. That might make it a little too powerful, and it would be a great tactic as you cast some sort of really good concentration spell.
Maybe, but didn't you describe it takes an action?
It does take an action, yeah. So you'd have to cast it, and then
it would be like
next
3
turn,
turns for her to pull that off.
Yeah, you cast it one turn, and the next turn you could climb inside.
Oh, so it doesn't take a full action to get out of it?
No, it does. I guess if you're including getting out of it first, yeah.
So you'd have to get out of it, cast the spell as an action, and then the third turn get back in.
Yeah,
so that's a lot. That's a lot of.
That's 3 turns to protect your concentration. Yeah.
Or you do the concentration spell before the combat starts, and
Yeah, I could see the argument either way, honestly.
I don't think
But
she's got a ton of concentration spells. Anyway.
no, I don't. Yeah, like I said, it's impressive how she's kept that going, and I've been letting it happen, and I've been trying to notice, although I forget also to watch for concentration spells. But honestly, I don't think it's like the opposite of Toril, and then I reminded of Valravn last campaign, characters that always cast these ongoing AoE or crowd control spells. She's just pure like damage and instant effects essentially.
Yeah. Which those kind of things are an interesting thing that I feel like is just a failing of 5e as a system, where there's a lot of spells where it's just like, I could be telling the DM, like, I'm casting Detect Magic every minute.
Yeah.
Every time we walk in a room, I could say it. Or I could just say, like, hey, I'm just casting this continuously. Like, and just do it. You know, it's just one of those like you bump up against the reality of the minute-long concentrations.
Yeah, and Demnix makes a good point that the only reason that would matter is if you had other things you wanted to concentrate on, and casting Detect Magic suddenly breaks that, I guess. But yeah, otherwise, I think I've been pretty lenient about that, right? Especially in this campaign.
Absolutely.
Like earlier campaigns, I might be more.
You always have,
yeah.
In terms of like the minute-long things that we say we're gonna keep recasting.
Yeah,
you've been very lenient on that. Like,
yeah, I'm like, sure, that's fine. You have Detect Magic on.
Every minute you recast the spell, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine. Yeah. Anything else about?
Because what's the alternative? You have to like tell me that you're casting it.
Yeah, and then it's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna forget to use the spell all the time, and it's never gonna come up. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're finally ready for the final countdown.
Nice.
Do-do-do-do.
Yeah.
Exciting. Hopefully, I think we'll get everybody here next week.
I think so.
And then
when do we lose everybody?
You might lose me on the 14th, and I think we lose Ray on the 21st.
Oh, okay. So I forgot it was so close.
So I know, which we're already in fucking March, people. So yeah, just stay tuned to the updates. The Discord's probably the best way to hear about.
We might take a mid boss battle break.
I know.
After the 7th, I don't know.
I mean, if you know, it's just vacation time is gonna butt up against it, and I really don't want to. Like normally, I would go with a session if we're missing one person, but I don't want to do that for final stuff. So unfortunately, we may have to have an awkward break right before the end. But I think next week we should all be able to still be here for the 7th.
Yeah.
All right, I think that will do it for this week's Chat from the Deep. Thank you to Chris and Raymond. Thank you to all the wonderful fans for watching. And as I just mentioned, I think we'll see you next week.
See you then.